Hello everyone, it's Ty here. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate the love and support lately, as it really means a lot to me. I've been doing YouTube for over half my life, believe it or not, and I've learned a lot along the way. It's weirdly helped me shape into the person I want to be in this world, an entertainer. So, thank you for listening to what I have to say. But anyways, let's get into the topic of today. Polsat Games is a Polish media site who dabbles in esports and anime time to time. Well, the other day they did an interview with Techland's lead game designer, the man, the myth, the legend, Tymon Smaktala, who's clarified some of the topics for us today. Of course, the entire thing was spoken in Polish, so special thanks to Incontinence for translating on Discord. This video is 44 minutes, so there's a huge variety of things talked about, but I'm gonna talk about everything today, no matter how long it takes, so you'll probably want to take a look at the time codes if you're looking for anything specific. So, let's just dive in and start off with some last-gen news. They basically went at it by creating the game, then going back and figuring how they can get it to work on last-gen consoles, so to put it simply, they basically prioritized next-gen first. Tymon states that their goal was to make it feel like a real urban environment with most locations accessible, as many other open world games go for just a more open feel, Spider-Man being an example. The buildings in Dying Light 2, according to what he says, can range from 1 to 2 stories to 10 to even 50, and then goes on to talk about how their new engine specifically made for this game can allow for every interior to be accessible, but they decided to opt for less since they feel the game wouldn't be as fun having to explore every room. So of course we can't explore every room of the 50-story building, but that shouldn't be much of a surprise. Tymon thinks it might be a good selling point to be able to explore every interior, but he also says the idea of you can enter any room, it ultimately creates a really boring playing experience, where it becomes really repetitive over time. After this, the interview moves on to talking about Dying Light 1, for which has been played by over 20 million people. It's pretty awesome. So he feels the second game doesn't really need to baby you through the experience, which I find is nice, allowing me to make mistakes and learn from it on my own. Tymon also says they went back and played the first one a lot throughout development, but eventually stopped because they felt the second one was just that much better. To him, he felt the game was clunky and nowhere near as immersive. Tymon says the main things players got out of Dying Light was the freedom in Infected. He believes the freedom in Dying Light 2 is very important, as depending on the particular situation, there are many ways to take it on. He says there isn't a multitude of freedom in the story, but there will be different ways to approach things. So speaking of freedom, let's talk about the choices you can make in Dying Light 2. Tymon talks about how many games have a choice mechanic like Assassin's Creed Valhalla that leaves you with a good impression, but don't actually impact much. In Dying Light 2 though, the choices have a direct and true effect on the world. They have an impact not only on the story, but also your surrounding environment. This works in two ways. One is your story choices, which obviously affect the story and everything related, and the other is the ability to assign certain districts or places in the area to a certain faction. As these factions are introduced to their new area, you will see changes happen to the surrounding area as a result of that faction, including gameplay changes such as traps and such. It is as a result of these choices that you will notice that certain quests will become easier due to the introduction of new gameplay elements by that faction. You will also have choices where you have to stop and think because these choices truly define you. You will encounter choices and side quests that make you stop and have to play things smart, since one choice could benefit the world you play in but not you the player, or in the contrary, a choice that makes the world worse for everyone but makes your gameplay easier. One of the hosts questions Tymon on Gadget's breaking gameplay, and he brings up the Dying Light 1 grappling hook. Tymon says that he and Techland recognize that the grappling hook in Dying Light 1 was a very popular and fan-favorite gadget due to its ease of traversal. However, in Dying Light 2, the grappling hook is very different and more realistic. Though, Tymon says that they could implement a feature that re-enables or reintroduces the OG Dying Light 1 style grapple hook if it's in demand. Chromatic, who helps me with the info for my videos, had a great idea, being one of the events at Dying Light 2 they bring back the grapple hook, which would be pretty cool. Tymon says the new hook will work more like Tarzan, where you swing, although the game will help you in the placement of where your hook should land, as we've seen in action. Tymon says that one of the programmers, who he believes to be a really smart and bombastically fun person, one day gathered everyone and told them, "We're making a paraglider." Originally, when this developer went off to make this paraglider, most of the team thought it was cool, but that's kind of all. However, now the paraglider proves to be a key addition to the game due to the numerous heights in the game. Tymon mentions that this paraglider actually doesn't ruin parkour. If anything, it adds to it. You can use it in numerous ways that makes parkour incredible. And those are his words, not mine. When asked about the game inspirations for Dying Light 2, Tymon didn't have a definitive answer, but eventually says Fable 3 and the Saboteur are the main two. Tymon eventually also talks about the elephant in the room being the Cyberpunk situation, and that they've learned a lot from it, and the pitfalls that can occur. For Techland, this was a difficult year for them, according to Tymon, since there isn't a lot of huge games releasing this year, meaning less competition. You would think that the less competition the better, but it actually just means there's more of a spotlight on them, so more pressure. Tymon also in the interview talks about why they revealed the game so early, being because they wanted to gain exposure for Microsoft's E3 panel. Tymon says ultimately it's a worthwhile decision to wait and delay the game, as now they are definitely ready and there shouldn't be any more issues from now on that could in some way hinder production, with them going on to reassure it won't get delayed again. During the wretched time of no Dying Light 2 news, Tymon states that he and many others really wanted to drop a huge amount of info but felt it was best to wait, as he thinks it'll be worth it all. Tymon confirms that they do have an organized QA and testing team for the game, and they have some groups of quote ordinary gamers to test too and leave feedback. We did see that screenshot on the channel before, so this just confirms it even more, which is great because honestly the more feedback the better. Tymon says that the first few days of release is when the devs feel the most pressured because it is when the players get to leave feedback on all their changes compared to Dying Light 1, so things like the grappling hook and mechanics of its type. And that pretty much wraps up the entire video. There is one other thing I'm going to talk about though, and that is the game difficulties, as I haven't talked about this on the channel before. During an interview between Tymon and AussieGG, we learned of the 3 main difficulties the game has to offer, with the first one being the basic difficulty, which really doesn't have a name that we know of as of yet. The next is the Night Runner difficulty, and finally the Huron Survivor. And that's going to be a wrap for today's video. There's other things we can take a look at, such as this other article talking about the mutations and how those things occur and how the body transmits the fluid that makes people infected and all that. But anyways, we'll get into that in the next video, so if you want, be sure to like the video and subscribe to keep up to date with the latest Dying Light 2 news. And my name is Ty, and stop by next time.